your studio right now?
Yes, my basement studio, yeah. So my name is Matthew Courtney, and I grew up in the Philadelphia area. My parents were musicians, and my mom passed away. My father remarried a woman who's very involved in the arts. So I've been around the arts, or it's been a part of my life for quite a while. I went to art school in Philadelphia, and then went to Ohio and went to art school, and then lived in Cleveland for a while, where I got my first teaching job and sort of established myself as an artist in Cleveland, which was, sort of self-affirming. It was kind of like, oh, I really am an artist. I was showing quite a bit. That was out of graduate school. And then I came back to Philadelphia with my wife and got a job at the Clay Studio, and then began to pick up teaching jobs where I taught at Penn, UArts, Drexel, Tyler, or sort of an adjunct mercenary. Whomever would hire me. And those jobs have just dried up. I think I've gotten too old. I'm not sure. They're hiring younger people. So, my career is taking a little bit of a turn, but I've been showing a lot, and it's really been really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Has the collaboration process taken place recently too? I know you like to work collaboratively just based off of some of the work you submitted. Has there been collaborations recently?
Yeah, a friend of mine, John Paris, lives in New York. I went to high school with John. We played lacrosse together, so we have this sort of art sports bond. He and I have collaborated on pieces, and we've never really gotten anything accepted. We keep applying for stuff that is sort of installation concept work, and it just has, maybe we're not applying for the same spots, or we're just haven't gotten lucky yet. We applied for a thing up in Lake George Arts Project. That's upstate New York in Lake George. So it's sort of a small gallery. And we were doing work that had to do with sort of the forces of nature and how destructive they could be. It's sort of a different angle at that. And there's a phenomenon that I think has only been recorded in the Adirondacks, where hurricane winds come through and they're so strong that they blow all the trees down, and all the trees are in one direction, and it's happened twice. So we were sort of trying to recreate that blowdown and have objects around this sort of disc with things that were going to be like trees laid down. It sort of looks like somebody took a giant comb and just dragged it through the forest. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
So I'll go through them quickly. Process pictures.
Awesome.
Glazing, loading a kiln, then influences. This is at UPenn. Mm-hmm. I spent a lot of time in China recently in the last 3 years, and I don't have pictures of that, but that's really influenced my work. I didn't want to give you guys a tour slideshow.
Sure.
But I'll talk about that quickly. I spent 2 months, 3 separate times in China, and those are like really condensed, like graduate school kind of experiences. We're working really hard for a short period of time. And then these are some China pics, influences. Mm-hmm. Recent work.
So a lot of your work is ceramic slip cast?
Some is slip cast, but most of it is press molded. So just like push it into the mold. Mm-hmm. All sorts of different molds kind of stuff. And then these are the books you asked about, books that I would recommend. Mm-hmm. Actually, that's one book. There's 2 covers. I think that the one on the left is the current one. These are people. I was trying to answer the questions. This is the artist that I would own.
If you could own a piece of art by any artist.
Giacometti, yeah. And then these are people that I've looked at recently. I don't really read art magazines that much anymore, and I get to New York maybe once or twice a year, so I'm not as current as I could be. But I had to teach this woman at UArts, and I really appreciated her work and her process, and was pretty great. Ann Hamilton is another one.
I love Ann Hamilton.
I was asked to write a paper about this when I was a teenager in art school, and she really influenced me because I was an industrial design major. Mm-hmm. And she's a painter and designer, and my teacher knew that, so she assigned me that person.
So how did your industrial design background inform a lot of the just like the multiples like that show up in your work?
Absolutely. Yeah. And my experience as being a potter. I have been attempting to collaborate.
And you had a collaboration during your residency in China, right?
Yes, with Keaton. We did a string of basketball beads. Here's the work in progress. So those are hollow. There's a lot of neat overlap. And this was in China, and basketball is really popular in China. And I got the basketball that we cast had Chinese characters on it that I think said China Basketball League, that's our association, CBA, but in Chinese characters. So that was neat, the impression of that. And then we made a big string of these. That was awesome. That's Keaton Wynn. He started this program in China along with another professor in Lanzhou, China. I think you pronounce it Lanzhou. It's in the middle of China. It's still old China. Every year I go back, it's changed a lot. It's being westernized quickly, but there's still sort of communist era buildings. And then there's buildings pre-communist era that I think they're called hutongs, the neighborhoods that are 1 story high, and they're systematically knocking that down and modernizing. But it's really interesting to be there and be able to see, maybe call it old China. And it's in the cusp of the desert, right on the edge of the Gobi Desert in central China.
Fantastic.
This piece, it's a string of Buddhist beads. It's 108 beads in a Buddhist string. And this last time I went there, this was in 2015, and I was there in 2018. The beads are becoming more and more popular, and they're becoming kind of expensive. There's sort of a jewelry. They're often made out of little sort of mini peach pits, and everyone wears them. And I'm certain that not that many people are Buddhists, but it's become a sort of a popular culture thing, which is sort of the crossover with this piece is religion and popular culture and stuff like that. I did a piece here in the States with footballs, and I thought there was a good connection with the sort of rosary bead football thing and people watching lots of football on Sunday. And I also, in China, I was trying to do things that were both Western and Chinese. So that's where the sort of bead counting thing came in.
Do you fire things in your house, or where do you fire all your ceramic pieces?
I have the studio has great facilities. I mean, I've been here for 20 years, and over those 20 years, I've built up a nice studio. So here's my kiln. It's a large, dining room table size, maybe kitchen table. I've got 2 other kilns. They're smaller, so I don't always have to fire the big kiln.
Right now, how have you been staying creative, sort of wherever you are, sort of quarantining right now? Well,
I started making these masks, but I had to teach sewing when I was teaching at Tyler School of Art, and we were doing soft sculptures, and I learned how to sew. And also, really early on, when I was an art student, my roommate was Susie Brandt, who is now head of the fibers department down at MICA in Maryland. She taught me how to sew. So I just sort of tried it. The sewing machine that I had was broken, so I bought a new sewing machine, and I've been sewing masks, and they've been really nice, really fun. I've made about 30 that I've given away to family members, and then from posts on social media, people starting to ask me if they can buy them, and then I got 2 companies asked me to make them in anticipation of them going back to work. That amounted to about 50 masks. That's sort of been my creative outlet. It takes me a long time. I'm not very good at it, and I'm sort of a perfectionist, so those 2 things in combination.
The perfect mask.
Like an hour to make a mask. But I'm getting faster, and that's what I've been doing with my hands lately. And I just got finished with the show at the Center for Emerging Visual Artists, and that push to get that work done is just marinating. There's usually a lull between big shows. I'm not the kind of artist who makes work all the time. I'm like sort of envy those artists. People who draw every spare second that they have and stuff. I usually, my life is busy. I have to do other stuff. And then when I get a show, I really knuckle down and make a bunch of work. So this is the lull after that show that was supposed to be up in March, but was closed due to the pandemic.
And you mentioned that it might open again in July.
That was like, that's what they were talking about. The day we shut it down. Okay. So and then the latest thing, or then it came up August, but I'm not optimistic. I mean, some things around the country are opening up. That's a building. There's a lot of old people live in the Barclay, and I don't think they want things opening up in there. So I think it'll be a while before that show opens up, but we'll see. I mean, they've got things scheduled. They keep pushing it back and back, and
Right.
we'll see how it works out.
Well, with that said, one of the questions that we wanted to know is, in what ways do you think that art and artists are beneficial during this time, during the pandemic?
I don't think making art about the pandemic or about our political situation is going to help people. I obsess over reading the news and stuff, and it just makes me crazy. So I would hope that art would take people out of their heads a little bit, and maybe the performing arts would be better suited for that than sculpture. But things like this, I think, would be great to have people think about other things, think about being creative, be stimulated other than current events. So I think that way. Music is really a way to go, I think. I look to that often.
I agree. So what would your dream project be to work on, once sort of things resume their normalcy?
Well, one piece I applied to set up a few times is to fill a room with these rockets that I make. Let me see if I can pull that up. That hasn't gotten a good reception yet, but I would like to do that sometime. These are the rockets. This is a combination of sort of maybe satire or political satire, and they're meant to be sort of big leaders, sort of with their machismo facing off Putin, maybe Xi Jinping, Trump, and what's his face in North Korea. And then it would be fun if I were able to get a gallery to allow me to make maybe a bunch of those rockets. And then the other thing that I was thinking about when I was in China, I have visited the Terracotta Warriors 3 times now. I feel really sort of so lucky that I've gotten to see that. But I had known of those things quite early on in my education and stuff. Actually made a piece about it with a row of penguins. It was sort of imitating that thing. So the rockets I was hoping to set the rockets up in the rows of the Terracotta Warriors.
Nice.
I know that you had some other images in your slideshow of things and artists that you were inspired by. Did you want to talk about how they inspire you and who they are? And
Giacometti, just due to sort of the intensity about, I don't really try to imitate his work or make work like him, but the way that he was really zoomed in to what he was doing, it's so neat to look at. I think the way Philip Guston was thinking when he made these things that are sort of terrifying, but they're funny at the same time. So I try to mix that thing up. So he's got paintings of Ku Klux Klan guys driving around smoking cigarettes, but he's painted them in sort of a cartoony way. I do like that mix of sort of unease or something with an edge, but something funny at the same time. So this piece here is the camels are sort of, in this piece, are sort of representing chaos, and the globe is the world. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's evident when people look at it. I think people see the sort of formal qualities of the shapes and stuff and the different processes and things, but that sense of being a little bit, the chaos, a little bit scariness is mixed with the fun. That's what I shoot for that a lot of times. So that's one way that I work. The other way is I do see work and imitate it and give my spin on it.
And I think there's something really narrational about the multiple that you use within your work a lot.
I think that relates to me learning pottery and coming to sculpture through ceramics and through the craft sort of education, and then coming out being interested in sculpture and then sort of moving that direction. Also, both my parents being musicians, practicing quite often. So I was very used to that repetitive thing. So hearing the scales of my house over and over again. And then they would have students come over, and the students would be doing scales in the house. That was my childhood growing up, would be me being upstairs, finished teaching, but they're hearing the scales over and over and over again, stopping and trying. And that other thing I really love about art is that just trying it, it's not working, so then you try it again, and sort of just pushing and pulling and trying to get it in the right spot.
I know clay can be a good teacher of life lessons too, because it warps and cracks and it does push and pull, and do you feel like that also, like working with clay, helps with your concepts and the way you feel about the world?
Yeah, I do. I let it go. You got, and I also, so there's this sort of Asian tradition of making stuff and having it look very natural. It's I think Japanese call it wabi-sabi, and the Mingei movement was a movement where there was a lot of that, where you're trying to make something look like it just happened intentionally. That's a kind of a very tricky, difficult thing to do, make it look like it just happened on purpose. But yeah, I do that. And then the process, you have to just let the process take over. So especially wood firing, where you put it in the kiln and you really don't know what's going to happen as far as the surface, how the surface turns out.
What are some words of advice that you'd like to offer to other artists, or what's the best piece of advice that you've been given?
I mean, this isn't particularly an art thing, but I think being nice to people is a really good advice. I think I was a little bit of a jerk growing up through high school and past then, and my social skills were sort of a little bit hard-edged. But, just being generous, I think, is really the best advice. I think that can really help people. And also work, never stop working. And also, I think if you can identify the things you're afraid of and just keep asking yourself, why is that? Why am I nervous about that? Why am I afraid of that? I mean, you would know, but I was terrified of talking about my work for quite a long time. So, you got to hit those things head on and work through them, and finding a way to have the courage to do stuff. I think being afraid prevents people get in their own way so often. So being nice to other people and not being afraid, I think, is the best advice.
Full agree.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely. And maybe, I know you showed us the piece of work you'd like to live with, but maybe you could introduce it.
So this was a really difficult question. So, but I settled on Giacometti. Any of these drawings, that would be so great to see that every day.
Awesome.
Yeah, you could look at it for a long time.
Yeah, and here's another. So rich. There's a lot of, you can look at a spot on that and enjoy that. I like that. I'm very interested in process. So he's his process is right up front. And I like the struggle making it. It's quite real. So I think that would be the one.
I know, that's a hard question. It's more just for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there anything else like us to know about you or your work or your process?
Do one sort of walk through one piece.
That'd be great.
So this was in China, and one of the ways I work is I see stuff, and actually the Chinese hosts really encouraged this or really fired this up for me. They asked the residents to look at the province, Gansu province is the middle of China, and they wanted sort of westernized to show them China from our point of view, or particularly Gansu. So then they were showing us tons of art in the province. It was so neat, and there's so much of it. So I would look at art and then reinterpret it a little bit. So that horse on top is very famous. It's the Gansu flying horse, and it's about that scale, the real one. It's made out of bronze. And then this year was not the year we made the basketball beads, but the molds were still there. So I was able to make the molds. And then that turtle I built by hand, coil building and modeling the turtle out. So the turtle is in some Asian myths holds up the universe. So I thought that was a great image. And also there are turtles in quite a lot of the art that I looked at there. And then that seal was something that we ran across. I asked the fellow if I could have it. He was happy. He was a wealthy businessman who was asking us about building kilns. And we went to the site and this was there. And he said, sure, have it. So that seal is supposed to be Trump, or maybe the sort of just the political movements or the wave in that direction, getting underneath the turtle who's holding up the universe, and everything is getting sort of flipped. And then the China seemed to be at the time sort of skating above the fray. But these are some of the works that I saw that influenced my making of that. That's a bronze turtle about the same size as that horse that I saw in Dunhuang, which is the north, or the sort of northwestern end of Gansu. They brought us there because the Magao caves are there, and there's 1,000 caves where Buddhists dug caves into the side of a cliff wall and made sculptures inside of the caves. It's amazing World Heritage Site. It's really, really neat. This is in Xi'an, And these turtles are supporting the stele, I think it's called. And this is sort of pre-printing, I think. And you could make a rubbing off of that thing on the turtle's back, and there would be either religious text or political, you know, what's happening, who's who, kind of a thing. There's the horse, the actual horse. That was found in Gansu province. A farmer dug it up.
Wow. And
then that's me sort of remaking this horse. And then the following time in 2018, I made a mold of this horse. It was a bad planning because I should have made the mold while the clay was wet, but I made a mold of the fired horse, and it worked, but it was more difficult. And then there's the turtle upside down. And then there's the piece again.
Is the seal made of wood?
The seal is, yeah, found object made of wood. I think it might have been an ad for a carnival or something. There's a hole in its nose. So I'm thinking maybe there was maybe a sign up there or something.
A great found object.
Yeah.
I know. I was so nervous to ask for it. One of the other residents were like, "Come on, Matt, just ask him. I don't think his feelings will be hurt." So there's your working through your fears, trying not to be shy.
Definitely.
And he was happy to give it to us. And then everyone was all excited about getting it into the car that we had.
Oh, yeah. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for the grant. Thanks for doing the interview with me. It's a blast. I really appreciate being recognized as an artist.
You're very happy too.
Oh, thanks very, very much.
Yeah. Thank you for taking all the time to have that slideshow together and everything.
Yeah,
too.
that was great.
My pleasure.
It was really a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, of course. Take care, Matthew.
Bye-bye.
Bye.